Good evening and welcome to this next and newest episode of Fiero Cast. Tonight we will be talking with Jennifer and Matt Goss as well as Gary Pickard about the annual Jim Gilbert Memorial event that is held in the fall. I am your host, Mike Cryer, and you are listening to the newest episode of Fiero Cast, the only podcast dedicated to the Pontiac Fiero and the Fiero community. Did you know that Fiero Cast has been awarded the Best Automotive Award Fiero Cast for Best Iconic American Car Brand Enthusiasts Club for 2023, as well as 2 awards in 2024, one for Best Global Business Award awarded Best Automotive Podcast, as well as Most Informative Automobile Podcast. FieroCast is a production of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, which is incorporated business in the state of Illinois. With over 50 episodes now and more are coming, FieroCast has been a project that started back in 2020 for the Fiero community. Thank you to the Fiero community for your support and listening to 5 years of FieroCast. It has been a pleasure producing each and every episode for you. And again, I am your host, Mike Cryer, and you are listening to episode number 52. You can find past FieroCast episodes at FieroFocus.com or on our Facebook page and on YouTube. We'd like to thank our FieroCast supporters for this 2025 season: the Fiero Store, Rodney Dickman, Bonter Solutions, the Midwest Fiero Clubs, Golden Eye Graphic, the N.I.F.E Store, the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, and Automodella. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Bonter Solutions and the Fiero Store. Are you looking for that special personalized gift for someone? Bonter Solutions can help you find that one-of-a-kind gift. Anything from t-shirts, sweatshirts, drinkware, signs, decorative items, holiday items, and so much more. They can design pretty much anything you want on them, from pictures of your car, your favorite sports team, a pet, or any saying that you want. The list is endless. Minimums are just one of each of any item, and the best thing is, they do not charge a setup fee. You can catch Bonter Solutions at several Fiero and Pontiac events in the area: Fiorama, the Dells Run, the 40th anniversary show coming up in a couple years, and the 2021 Indian Uprising All Pontiac show. So, feel free to visit their website at bontergifts.web.com or give them a call at 847-453-3290. You can also email them at bonnie@bontersolutions.com. We also have promotional item products that they offer as well. That website is bontersolutions.com. We know how hard it is to find Fiero parts. We also know that as years go by, finding parts isn't going to get any easier. The big box stores will never make new Fiero parts because our community is just too small. This is why we need to support the companies that support us. For nearly 30 years, the Fiero Store has sponsored our club events, provided free technical support, and produced well over 150 exclusive parts that no big box store would even consider. So, next time you need Fiero parts, head over to thefierostore.com and browse through thousands of products that are specifically designed for your Fiero. That's fierostore.com, the world's largest source of Fiero parts. All right. Good evening and welcome to the newest episode of FieroCast. I'd like to welcome our guests tonight, Jennifer and Matt Goss and Gary Pickard, to FieroCast. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Tonight we are going to talk about the Jim Gilbert Memorial event that you guys host in the fall. Before we dive too deep into the event, which its inception, the Jim Gilbert Memorial build was brought together over 6 dozen volunteers, 5 dozen supporters, and an immeasurable learning and camaraderie with the Fiero community. So let's get a little bit more in depth on this event and help spread the word and help people understand what this event is and the meaning behind the event. So, can you guys tell us a little bit about the event, how it started, the meaning behind the Jim Gilbert Memorial event?
So we started the event in 2020, and I'll turn it over to Gary in a second to give a little bit more background on the actual genesis of it. But as many of us, think back to the fall of 2020, we know what a really challenging time it was for many of us, with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that summer, I had lost my dad, who was one of my best friends, and also Matt lost a father-in-law that was really near and dear to him. So we were personally going through a really, really tough time. And at that point, we were, beginning to form a greater friendship with the Pickerts. And one night, Gary called us with a challenge that he had been presented with that I'll let him share more about momentarily. And that was kind of the beginning of the build. So, Gary, do you want to kind of tell the rest of the story?
Well, so before I get into the story, I think to answer the question, I mean, Jen kind of gave you the basics, but really the big thing is, like Jen said, we just started our first Fiero meeting between Jess and I, meeting Jen and Matt and any of the Fiero community, was in the Carlisle 2019. Before that, we didn't really know anyone or have an idea of what this whole Fiero group was even about. And then when Jen's dad had passed and we started talking about things, the whole genesis of this thing was just about the giving back and the camaraderie and the doing things for the community like her dad had done. And things don't happen just out of chance. This was obviously something we could have never planned for, but obviously what we were doing was almost just a continuation of what her dad had already started. So it just felt fitting that we basically adopted him as the kind of the father of our cause, so to speak. And that's the answer. That's where it comes from. And all of us getting together, yeah, there's specific reasons, but it's really about the community. It's about what her dad started and the tech sessions and the camaraderie behind the whole thing.
What would you say is the main focus of the event, and was there a main focus, or did it just, as the event started, the focus became more prevalent to what was needed?
Yeah, so when we kicked it off, we had no idea of like making this an annual thing. As I mentioned, the ball kind of got rolling in September of 2020 when Gary got a phone call from a young man who was battling stage 3 testicular cancer, which ironically my father had also battled many, many years ago. And his Fiero was his only form of transportation back and forth to his chemo and radiation appointments. And he loved his Fiero, like we all do, but it had a severely rotten frame. The upper frame rails were pretty much gone, and it needed a transmission. And so when he took it to the transmission shop, they refused to work on it because of the severity of the rust issue. And so he called Gary, had gotten his name from another member in the community, and heard that Gary might be willing to work with him and might be a little bit more flexible than the transmission shop. But Gary knew as well that rotted frame rails are a really big challenge to overcome. And so we all put our heads together. He called us and he said, "Is there anything that we can do to help this kid?" And so that's where it all began. And we came up with the concept of that we would kind of do one last hurrah in my dad's garage. As Gary mentioned, through the years, my dad had given back so much to the Fiero community. through formal tech sessions that he hosted for years at our house, and informally to just kids that lived in the area and needed help with something, and they would just come over. And soon he'd have a new 20-year-old friend that like would stop by and get advice on how to fix their Fiero. And he'd give them parts and help them out. And so it just seemed really fitting to, have this kind of one last hurrah in his garage, and to fix this young man's car, because he only lived about 45 minutes from my parents. And so we also found a member of the community who was willing to donate a frame and the necessary things to make that happen. And we booked Halloween weekend in 2020, and put it out there expecting that maybe like a handful of people might be available and might be willing to come and help, and do whatever needed to be done to get the car project done. And we ended up having an astonishing 26 people show up. And then we had about another 2 dozen people from across the country that donated funds or parts for the car to not only get the car on a solid, but also get the car painted and a new interior and an engine refresh and a new transmission that was so sorely needed. And that was the first year. And then what's really funny about that first year is that the original plan was for Gary and his wife to bring their travel trailer, their cursed travel trailer, as you're going to soon, discover, to Pennsylvania. And they were going to, camp out at my parents'. My parents had purchased a motorhome when my dad was ill, and so Matt and I were going to stay in that, and we were going to, just be there all weekend. Well, Gary got the trailer stuck and ended up having to come without the trailer and without his wife. And the three of us ended up getting to know each other really well, sleeping in the motorhome together for what was originally supposed to be a Thursday night to Sunday event that turned into a Thursday night to Tuesday morning event. And so we might have overshot our shot the first time, but we did get the project done, and it was a great bonding experience. And at the end of it, we said, you know what, maybe we'll do this again next year. So we've, some years we've focused on a specific person and their car. Other years we've done a bring what you broke and made it a learning experience for people to like get the guidance they need to fix their own cars. So as Gary said, it's just really all about community.
That's, I mean, just the amount of people that came and helped, and just the donation amount, it's like, that's unbelievable. What was his reaction after everything was done?
Well, he's not a very outwardly, he doesn't talk a lot,
Yep.
but you could tell, obviously, he was very appreciative. But I think what speaks even more than that is the fact that he showed up to Carlisle that year and pretty much every year since. So
That's awesome.
I mean, that's really kind of ignited the spark to get out there, enjoy the car. So I'd say, not only that, but he's since then taken it on quite a cruise and gone, on a pretty good distance trip with that thing too. So yeah, I think he turned out a lot better than expected for him. So that's good too.
That's great. That's great. So after you guys wrapped up on that one and you started looking at the future, and you were kind of, what, besides that, everything, that all the positive stuff that happened out of that first event, what was the other main focus then to continue this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years after that?
So I would say that the biggest thing of all is, Gary and I talked after the fact, and we all looked at each other like, we're never doing that again. And by that, it meant taking a car completely apart, swapping many things, painting a car all in 7 days,
Upgrading it too.
Yes, and
all in that one garage, right?
correct.
Wow.
So that goes to tell you that what you see on TV is not true. They do not do it in 1 hour. But I think the biggest thing is after the fact of, we decompressed, we reflected on a lot of things, and through, in the end, the camaraderie that was there and how much information was passed and what people learned, which was what the tech sessions were all about. Yes, you were helping somebody, but as a focal point. But in end, I would go to say that so many people benefited from so many things in the long run, and that is probably the biggest thing that's kept that going. Between Gary hosting, us hosting here in Virginia, it there's always so much that gets learned, and we've really migrated into the bring what you broke, and small troubleshooting things to something small as dash lights that are out to uh putting new
Loose
struts
steering
on a car.
column.
Yeah,
Yeah,
steering
loose
columns.
struts.
It's we've torn down the top end of engines for oil leaks and repaired that kind of stuff. It's really a good opportunity for a lot of people that don't have the garage space or the tools or even the knowledge to be able to come to where there's somewhere that has all of those items, if you will, and really grow from there.
So
Well, even like teaching Deb how to put like the sail panels on, it's not specifically something that's wrong. It just, even if you just want to make your something nicer, and didn't, like Matt said, didn't have the understanding or the tools to do it. So it's just a whole combination of things.
so when you guys are working on the cars and combining that with a tech session, do they when everything is said and done, do you feel that they have become more knowledgeable about the cars and the process that it takes, that if they have to do it on their own, they can do it on their own down the road?
Absolutely, I would think so. I mean, the even just the overall general knowledge of the car. I mean, it's not always a 100% tech point that they might learn, but they may learn something that was only in an 84 or something that was only in an 88, or the fact that there's really not an 86 and a half, and it just means that they switched from a 4-speed to a 5-speed, and why all those connectors are still in wiring harnesses in those years, kind of deal, for the 4-speed, 5-speed. And it's just a whole lot of information gets shared. And I think the friendships that have built and grown or blossomed, whatever term you want to use, through all of that is phenomenal.
Um, is this open? If somebody approaches you, is it just open to the Fiero community or somebody that has a Fiero, or when you say the broken, is it open to really anything that's broken?
I mean, for the sake of everybody's sanity, we usually stick to Fieros. I think last year we had a random repair on another vehicle. There was one year I think we fit something else in. Just because it was a fairly simple repair. But normally, like, the spirit of the weekend is around Fieros, and anybody in the Fiero community is welcome to attend. I mean, this past year we had people from Washington State, Iowa, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, all the way down into Alabama. I mean, there were people from everywhere that came, and anybody's welcome, whether they bring a car or don't bring a car. And we really never have lacked for things to work on. On the years that we've done, the first 2 years we did single cars, and then year 3 was just everything, bring what you broke. And then year 4 we did a single car and additional cars, and then this year was back to the bring what you broke again. And we've each year helped probably 9 to 10 separate vehicles gain greater roadworthiness and help target issues that people are having.
And just so everybody understands, it's an event that helps get the Fieros back on the road if somebody is struggling, or doesn't have the knowledge in order to get them back on the road. It's not a event to upgrade anything, correct? It's more just to
Can
help.
be.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if somebody wants to like, I don't know, one year we upgraded somebody's struts, another year somebody got an upgraded rear suspension,
Coilover.
raffled
Yeah.
off.
On a totally stock 86.
Yep.
And
Nice, nice.
the second year we did a 3800 swap in a car, for somebody that was, near and dear to our Jen and I's personal friendships, but also was near and dear to Jim. And, this person would give the shirt off their back to whoever needs it. And, was in a rough spot, had some health issues with his back. And, it was one of those things he always wanted. And I think actually was that year 4 that, the car came to the build, and they had a very exciting 3 or 4 miles. So they put a window in the transmission, and we need to get back to that one and get that one going, but we'll get there some point.
Do you see walk through the process of do the Fieros come locally? Do they come from other states? How do you guys on the Fieros that you guys help with versus the bring us your broken? How do you go about kind of working with those people or making that decision on whose car you guys are going to work on?
So I think a lot of times it's, where we're all at, like on what we decide on for like the theme for the year. I mean, as everybody in the Fiero community knows, it's been an exceptionally busy few years for Gary. And, we've certainly had a lot of different things going on. So if we are at a point where we don't feel confident we could tackle something in just a weekend, we tend to make it like a bring what you broke event. But we do, it's more like an informal decision-making process. For example, year 1, the young man called Gary. He was not looking for a handout or for free labor or for anything like that. He had, he was going to, make an attempt to find someone that he could pay to do this job. But we felt, given his circumstances, that he was a very deserving candidate. And then in year 2, as Matt mentioned, the individual that we helped that year had actually, despite having significant medical issues, had been like a huge advisor on the project year 1, despite being, in very bad physical shape. And so like those 2 choices just kind of naturally came to us. The 4th year, we had heard about a gentleman who had gotten in over his head with a hot rod shop in St. Louis. It was a very tragic and sad story. But at the time, we had hoped that we could get his car, in a good spot so that he could enjoy it. Unfortunately, when it came east, we found that it had even more significant issues than what we even realized, based on the assessment of the vehicle that we had at the time. So it's kind of, I would say, like it's a, as we hear about it, as we see fit type of situation, and somebody in the community that we feel, could really deserve a bright spot in their life when we focus on a single car.
Do you get a lot of questions about some of the things that in like if somebody comes to you and says this is the issues that I'm having, can you then walk them through it to where they don't have to come to this? Or is that something where if they're really struggling with an issue, how outside of your area, can you help them versus having them come to you guys?
So we do it all the time, and you can kind of finish up. I think Matt's gonna go to the same place I am, but we get stuff every day. I mean, it's not just during the show type of thing. I mean, it's literally, I get messages on a daily basis about things and continue to share information and help guide people in the right direction. So that's an ongoing part of this whole thing, and kind of just the community as a whole. The planning and as far as the people coming to us, it's at that point the fix what you brung, or the fix what what is broke is more of a bonding experience, a cruise, a picnic, going out for ice cream, so it's not where the car is totally broke down and can't make it. Those are not typically the ones we, try to take on. And the ones that we do choose, like Jen said, that are individual cars as a focus, those, the person doesn't even know. We kind of, things fall into place. We discuss that as kind of a team between us and make those decisions long before, the end of the year rolls around.
What are some of the issues that you guys have seen over the past couple of years that need to be addressed or need to be worked on?
So, we've had people that want to do some body work. And just didn't know, so we've talked them through that at the events. Cars that were mishandling, just not, were perfectly drivable, but may have had like a funny miss or something like that. And this year we did some troubleshooting on a car a guy brought that was backfiring, and we've, after a little bit of troubleshooting and doing some things, we realized it had a timing chain that had stretched and was causing it to be out of time on deceleration. It pick any gamut of Fiero issues that you could ever imagine, and we might all be sitting around and someone goes, "Oh yeah, my such and such does this," and the next thing someone says, "Oh, I've seen that," and there's information getting shared, and next thing you know, that vehicle's in the garage, and we're addressing that and doing something with it.
And there's usually multiple things going on at once. We have a tendency to, have 2 or 3 cars in the garage, another one or two outside during the day. I mean, this past year we repaired somebody's seat tracks while working on their shift and select cables. We put a water pump in somebody's car. We compression tested another vehicle, installed a, fixed a trunk release and repaired an instrument cluster. Another car that hadn't been on the road for 20 years, we put dew wipes and end links on it and took it out on a cruise.
The one thing that really stands out for that I see with you guys is the extreme knowledge that you guys have. And I think that gets lost in the Fiero community a little bit. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to ask questions. And I think, the knowledge that you guys have and sharing that knowledge with individuals that are struggling with their cars and just overall is a major plus. Where did all that knowledge come from? Is it something that you guys have worked on the cars for so long, or it's just you're just very familiar with what the Fiero is?
So if you look at the person behind me, that's where probably most of it came from. Other than that, when you get into the swaps that Gary and I work on and things like that, that's stuff that we've worked on these cars, and we had such a knowledge base already that we felt confident to say, hey, let's marry some crazy package together and put it in a car and make it work. And that's one of the things that I think as a whole, Jim, if when I had a conversation with Jim about LS swapping Jen's car, he was like, a little hesitant, but he was like, good Lord, that'll be fun. And, he was thinking of the after fact, and we will say that the after fact is the more fun than the swap part as far as that one went. But, my Fiero knowledge base has to be probably 70% from Jim.
So people kind of get to know Jim a little bit too. What was he like? What was he like around Fieros? What was his personality? What drew him to the Fiero and that knowledge, to expand that knowledge and then transfer that knowledge to you.
So do you want the people that knew him publicly or the people that knew him privately and publicly? Because it was definitely a Mr. Jekyll or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation sometimes.
If his tools went missing, especially.
Yes. But I will let Jen tell the story of how the Fiero, which sits in our garage today that has the license plate of the first, came about.
So when the Fiero was launched in 1984, my dad desperately wanted one, but he had two young daughters. I was 3.5 at the time, and my sister was just about 1. And my mom told him absolutely not. He already had one 2-seater vehicle that did not fit the entire family in his 62 Corvette that he had purchased a few years before I was born, and that it was not a practical vehicle for them to have. And so then in the fall of 1984, they had what was called the Mac Again, Back Again sweepstakes. For the young listeners, back in the day in the Mid-Atlantic, the ATM cards were called Mac cards, and Mac was a brand. And so they were bringing ATM cards back for a second time. Apparently, the first time they were not as successful. And every time you used your Mac card at the ATM, you were entered in a drawing to win a grand prize of a brand new Pontiac Fiero. And I remember as a little kid, my mom going to the bank every day and taking out $5. And I'm sure my dad used the card at some point during that promotional period as well. But one day my dad got a phone call and it said, "Congratulations, you've won a brand new 1984 Pontiac Fiero." And my dad hung up on them because he thought it was somebody from his job pranking him because they knew how bad he wanted this car. But a short while later, someone from the bank called back and said, no, that he really had won the car. And he knew, thanks to his brother working for GM, that an 85 GT was on the horizon. And so he asked if he could pay a very nominal amount. I think it was about $2,000. I still have the paperwork actually right here. To upgrade it to a 1985 GT. And that car came home in May of 1985, fully optioned with the addition of a rear defroster. And my dad drove it to work every day for about the next 20 years, but he didn't have a very far commute. I know when we first started getting into going to Fiero shows and things like that, the car still had sub 60,000 miles on it, at least, maybe even in the 40s. He, when I was about 18, said that he was thinking of getting rid of the car because it needed a clutch. And I promise I did not contribute at all to it needing a clutch. But he was going to get rid of it because he didn't want to tackle that project. And he said to me, "If you'll help me, I'll keep the car and we can do it together." And thus was born our father-daughter, what ultimately became a family and son-in-law foray into the Fiero community that started in the summer of 1999 and been here ever since.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then like we said earlier, from there it grew into like Dad was while he could get upset when his tools went missing or something wasn't going exactly as he hoped, he and my car had a very contentious, my blue car had a very contentious relationship, hence its name. He was really a people person. There were no strangers wherever he went. He would talk to anybody and everybody. People in the Fiero community that were older than him that he learned from. One of his really close friends became Fred Bartemeyer, and they would, talk for hours about the cars. And then, kids in the community, as Matt and I got a little older and, we had our own, household and things like that, it wasn't uncommon for, young kids like Cody Klein to stop by and ask him questions, and Dayton Shirey when he lived in Pennsylvania. And Dad just loved sharing his knowledge with people. He was a natural educator, a natural teacher, and just really enjoyed and loved talking about it.
That's awesome, and just how that from start to finish. So going back and as going back to the first event, the second event, is there a cost to the owner besides getting the car out to them or to you guys? In or is it all the donations that we start that when the car is brought to you guys, the list of what's needed is already determined and is then parts donated based on what is needed prior to the car coming to you. And is there a cost to the owner?
So I'll cover some of it, and then Matt and Jen can fill in the gaps. The bottom line is we take care of as much of it as we can. It looks like we just lost those two. Are you still there,
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I'll cover some of this while they're trying to get back in. But so no, some of the cost or most of it, if not all, is covered through donations. If it's like a bring what you broke type thing, and they'll typically bring the parts with them. If they don't have something, we'll typically find a part to donate. The bigger things, the individual cars, that's where we get together as a team. And like the Colin build, the first one that Jen was talking about, that one, we were able to get enough donations together where they did not have to pay for anything. So he basically just got to enjoy it and pay for upgrades, for things he did after he got the car back. The one where the fourth year, where we went through the vehicle from another hot rod shop, the owner only paid for the parts to upgrade his car. All the fixes, all the labor, that stuff was paid for by our time and other donors. So that was kind of like a one-off. But typically the bring what you broke type things are owner's expense, unless there's something we can do to help them out.
So going back to the first event when you went from a Thursday to a Tuesday, typically what's the span of either a full event of a car or bring what you broke?
So like Jen said, we know the individual events we'll plan those out months ahead of time, except for that first one. That was kind of a surprise. So that was early September. So we had about a month to plan that one. And we brought other people on board, and sent out a list, and got people to sign up for different things. And then we would help also go find things. So that one, I would say, Bill, they're all kind of, except for the bring what you broke events, they're all very different and individual. So we got enough to pay for everything on the first one. The second one, we got a car donated to build and do that 3,100 supercharged swap. The fourth one was the owner's car, but he had already spent an enormous amount of funds. So we were able to keep his additional funds to fix it and get some things he wanted that paying that amount of money he should have had, that we were able to do, I would say, at a fraction of what he paid that hot rod shop. It was, we're talking pennies on the dollar compared to what he paid that hot rod shop to do. So I don't know if they answer your question directly, because they're all individually unique, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, could gear towards you, Gary, could be towards Matt. Do you see this type of event spreading to other Fiero communities or other clubs, or is it really help if you have the knowledge that you guys have in order to do something like this outside of your area?
So I think first of all, you have to have a club that's willing to do something. And I think that's part of what's missing in today's society and why I think we're really trying to keep this going and build the camaraderie, the community as much as we can to give back. Because there's a lot of clubs that could do it. And I don't think you have to have, a huge amount of knowledge. There's YouTube, there's manuals. If there's a will, there's a way. You can find a way to get things done, and there's always something you can find to do to make it either safer, more roadworthy, or just a beautification project. So there's lots of way clubs could focus on doing this same type of events. You just don't have to do as in depth or as technical.
Do you guys see the Fiero community growing older, or do you see the Fiero community growing younger with some of just a lot of things that you guys do?
I mean,
I will answer that with yes. Especially in MFO, I would go to say that, yes, we are OGs in the Fiero community. As far as Jen and I, we've been around for a long time. And, those of us that have been around for, 20 years in the Fiero world are getting, less and less. One of the things that I extremely covet and like to, really foster are, ideas like what Justin has had with his car, things that Cody Klein likes to do with his stuff. If we don't do that, in supporting of, Cameron in New England, if we do not support that younger generation, there's going to be no reason for us to keep up with the knowledge base or even doing some of the things that we're doing as far as, how do we find a newer part that we can adapt to what the Fiero is now and keep these cars on the road because you can't get bearings or whatever it may be somewhere down the road.
I mean, I would say at least a quarter of the people who were at the build this year were under 30. Many of them were even under 25. And so I think we're seeing, interest in the young kids in participating in these types of events, at least in the Mid-Atlantic region. And that's been true ever since, the first year. I think we've gotten more and more younger people. I mean, and at Carlisle every year, I would say at least a quarter of the attendees are young people, which is really great to see.
I agree, and I think that's one of the things that's going to be able to keep the Fiero community strong and going is getting those younger people involved and knowing that there are groups of people out there to help keep the Fieros on the road, to help as they get to that 45, 50, 55, 60-year-old cars, that there is a group that, that will help. It's not fixing the car itself. It will give them the knowledge base that they need in order to get those cars back up on the road. Is there a way that people can help to the event, and whether it's volunteering, donations, how could somebody help with that?
Yeah, so one of a couple ways. I mean, our first choice is always to tell somebody if they can make it. We'd love to have them. There's a lot of, we're right off of Interstate 81 when we hosted in Stanton, and Gary's on, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, or is in Southern Maryland. So if somebody's in the vicinity or even up for a drive, that's priority number one, or a flight in some cases. As I mentioned, we had somebody from Seattle this year. And so, just the willingness to just come and pitch in and get involved. If somebody can't get involved, we've had some members of the Fiero community say, hey, like if you have a young kid that's coming and they need a part for their car, let me know and I will happily send the part in advance. Or people have donated other things, that have really brightened somebody's weekend, and life moving forward, because it's a part on their car that they use or see, whenever they're in the car. So those are, definitely ways. We've had people sponsor like meals, like breakfasts or lunches or dinners for the event, which is also really cool. We ask that everybody that comes chip in for food, that they, bring snacks and then chip in, a certain amount for meals. We always try to do a cookout one night and ask people to bring things or, grab something from the local grocery store on their way in from the hotel in the morning. Um, so yeah, those are definitely like some ways they can get involved. I don't know when we usually try to start to plan for the next year, truly plan like after Carlisle. I'm not sure yet what our plans are going to be for this fall. But just to stay tuned to the MFOA Facebook page and our personal, like the Picker Performance Facebook page and our personal Facebook pages, we'll share details about it. Every year we create a website about the build leading up to it, and then it turns into an archive of the event, so people can actually go to the most recent version of the site and then hit from there all of the previous years and see pictures and like sponsors and things like that of the event.
What's that website? People.
So this past year's website is bit.ly/JGMB5. So all lowercase, bit.ly/JGMB5 is in Jim Gilbert Memorial Build 5.
And what does this year's event look like?
We got to survive Carlisle first.
So, you guys help, a lot of the Fiero community. When I was on the website, I think for the last year's, there was a charity. Do you guys try to also, not only you guys are helping the Fiero community, but you guys also have a charity that you guys help?
So I'll let Gary talk a little bit about that, because the charity this year was something new. In previous years, when we didn't have people donate directly to like the single car builds, we had people donate parts or funds to Fiero Source, which is a community charity that tries to help get people connected with parts for lower costs, that they need to keep their cars running, that Cody Klein does. And they provide a lot of other services to the Fiero community, including like a map of garages and other supports. But this year we went in a different direction with the donations to NAMI, and I'll let Gary share a little more on why we made that decision.
So that fourth year build we were talking about, Bill, was for a gentleman named Scott. And Scotty, like I said, I don't want to give a specific number, but I'll just tell you that the number was astronomical of what he paid this hot rod shop. And that fourth year, we had, quite a list, but it was swapping parts that quickly turned into a full engine rebuild. And literally, we had enough parts to attempt it, and was almost successful. The plan was to come back to it after Carlisle and finish it up for the gentleman, and life, unfortunately, got very difficult, and he ended up taking his own life. So that's why for the fifth year, we asked for donations in memory of Scotty, and gave to that organization. So that's not the typical, obviously we like to see happier endings to these events. But we felt it was a good way to take a quick break and do something in remembrance of somebody that really had given a lot to try to build the car of their dreams. And even though we tried to do our part, it is a sobering reminder that life is tough, and sometimes there's more about more going on, and so it was good to give back in other ways other than physically working on the cars.
Yeah, and sometimes people just need that support, and knowing again that somebody's there that they can look up to, and that they have that support that will give back to them too. So yeah, I mean, you guys do so much. I mean, it from everything that you guys have said tonight. I mean, that's a lot, and a lot of people are very appreciative of that. Jen, you had mentioned
sponsorships is if somebody um, can attend to volunteer to help and wants to do more than just donate, is there levels, or is there what type of sponsorships can they offer to help with these events?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some members of our community, Russ Warmuth is a prime example. He makes great parts for our Fiero interiors. He has, sent products in, in some cases we've known, this person, needs a new steering wheel, or we know that they were planning on, buying a set of seat covers at Pep Boys to put on their car, but Russ finds out and sends like a set of seat covers, donates a set of seat covers to the weekend. So for people who make products, we can usually find somebody in, need of an upgrade for that. Sometimes we've done it like raffle style where everybody puts their name in a hat and, somebody gets the privilege of getting that part installed. Gary has mentioned, donate us a rear suspension kit one year. Other opportunities are, meal sponsorships. It can get expensive to feed everybody. And we try to, especially because some people come from long distances, like we try to, get people to cover a breakfast, and it's as simple as like somebody stops at Dunkin' Donuts or goes to McDonald's and gets sandwiches. Like we're not eating steak, like we're not eating prime rib every night. This is not a prime rib event, unlike Carlisle. But so those opportunities exist as well. And if anybody, wanted to be involved in that way, all they have to do is reach out to me via email, and I'm, more than happy to help nail down, what would be a fitting sponsorship for something like that.
Yeah. Before we start wrapping up here, what are your guys' final thoughts on keeping this going? I mean, like I said, we're not getting younger. And as time goes on, I mean, this event has touched a lot of people. Do you guys see yourself passing that knowledge down to the next generation to keep something like this going?
I mean, I think that's the goal. I think Gary and Matt would agree with me there.
Yeah. I mean, our own kids attend, so, they obviously Justin and last year Bryce, my kids are much older than Ashley, but at that point in their life, it's tough. They actually sacrifice stuff they have going on in their personal lives with their own families to come do things. So I know that they see the worthwhileness and they appreciate, the camaraderie enough to make those personal sacrifices and attend these with me. Obviously it's a lot easier for me to get the time and have the finances to go do stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's there, and seeing, the interaction between the younger crowd, like Jen said, it's almost kind of brought on a life of its own. Even outside of these events, you can see them corresponding and keeping in touch with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, Ashley's always the youngest active participant, and she looks forward to this event every year. And we'll frequently ask at points during the year, like, when's the build? What are we doing this year? It was actually part of, a conversation at dinner tonight. And she actually wanted to know, guys, if we can paint her car this year. That was her request. Could her car be the build car? I told her that would need to be discussed with Cody. Cody's our de facto painter every year. It's become kind of a running joke. Because the first year he was not supposed to paint the car. We had a professional painter lined up who had volunteered some time, and the individual got hurt the day before the build. And by that point, we had already committed to painting this car. So we had to cobble together a paint booth in the garage and a prep station outside in a Harbor Freight tent that we still have and use as part of the build weekends.
Nice. Any final comments on this year's event or on past events that maybe people just get more information out there?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a solid comment on past events other than, what we've already talked about. All of the information that's given out, the, giving back to the community, all of those things are, on the frontal lobe. But, it's one of those events that, Gary, came up with it and said, hey, let's do this. And, we've kind of taken it, we've run with it, and a lot of great things have come out of it between knowledge pass, cars fixed, lives touched, no matter however you look at that. And, there's been other events like this that have been one-offs. And, I think the biggest thing for me is, I wish there were other clubs that had that support like Gary did for Jen when he approached us and said, hey, you know, let's do this. Let's help somebody out, however it may be. And then, we've all kept that torch burning. So, for people that are listening to this, if you're in a club that has the ability and that knowledge base, definitely, get this going, because, let's make it a common thing among the Fiero communities that, all over the place, this kind of thing's happening.
I agree. I mean, there's many clubs across the Midwest, the Northeast, the South, and the West that there's got to be the knowledge out there in those groups too. And you need groups like that, and it's also it's preserving the Fiero as well. And it goes back to what I've said for many years. The Fiero community is more of a just a larger family, and we have to all look out for each other. And you guys are looking out for a lot of people, and you're touching a lot of lives with this event as well. And that's the biggest thing too, is you guys are there for everybody, and other clubs should take sight of that and learn a lot from it too. And hopefully clubs will see that and start maybe coming up with events like this. And maybe if it's not on a yearly basis, it's but still, it to show the support out there is awesome. So thank you guys for doing what you do. I mean, it's great. So as we wrap up the Jim Gilbert Memorial event, you guys also have another event. So you guys just keep popping out events. Your big event is Fieros at Carlisle. So before we close out tonight, tell the community, Fiero community, about this event that you guys do that's grown a lot as well. I think you guys have been averaging about 100 cars per show the last couple of years, if not more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last couple of years we've been, 110 on up many of the years. Even last year, in literally what felt like hell, because it was over 100 and some degrees with the heat index and no precipitation like we sometimes get. We still had a fantastic turnout. I think we had close to 115 cars. Fieros at Carlisle last year celebrated its 30th anniversary, so this year obviously will be 31. And it started out as a show within the import kit car show at Carlisle, because the kit car obviously was heavily tied to the Fiero in the 1990s. And out of that, we remained with import kit car for over a decade. And then the show was transitioned to GM Nationals, which is a show that Carlisle Production started in 2000. And we have, since about 2016, 2017, we've, started to see an upward trend again after a lull for a while. I give Gary all the credit in the world for, coming up with the Jim Gilbert Memorial build concept and the name, which was really awesome, because he unfortunately never got to meet my dad. I've really got to give Matt, all the credit for helping to grow Carlisle, because he sat down and said, why don't we make it, a multi-day event? It was really just a Saturday. Some people came in on Friday, but there was nothing really formal that took place. And so in 2019, I think 2018 or 2019 was our first multi-day event. And, we start out on Thursday and go through Sunday morning. And I think that that's also really contributed to making it a destination. And, we try to keep that same welcoming environment that you see at the memorial builds. I mean, one year, our tent turned into a de facto car garage when someone had issues coming in from Ohio, and I forget what specifically throwout bearing I think needed to be changed. And then on the cruise, somebody's brake caliper caught on fire, and another attendee who had trailered his car to the show, actually our second memorial build recipient, said to the kid, here's a caliper off my car. And he literally jacked his car up and took a brake caliper off and handed it to the young man so that the young man who had driven his car to the show could get home. And so, we really just try to make it bring whatever you have, whatever it looks like. We don't care. We're here to celebrate Fieros. Yes, there is a show component on Saturday, but this year on Thursday night, we're going to do autocross. And then Friday, we're going to have a tech session and luncheon at Tom Durr's, who also has a really great Fiero store. We're going to have a cruise that afternoon, followed by a pizza party. And then thanks to some arm twisting between us and the third generation Camaro Club, Friday night, we're turning Carlisle into Radlisle, and we're having an 80s party where there's going to be car displays, 80s bands. And then once it gets dark, they're going to play Days of Thunder in the grandstand area, and, music, dancing, fun. And then Saturday all day is what we call our main show day, where in addition to the class awards that Carlisle Production allows participants to vote on, we also have about 20 special awards that we give out. Everything from, best engineered, best paint, stock and non-stock, through, more fun awards for things like best theme. And other fun things. We also do hard luck and longest distance and things like that as well, to really celebrate all the different things. And then Saturday night is usually every night's always some type of party in the parking lot, but Saturday night's usually our biggest parking lot party at the hotel. And then Sunday morning we have a breakfast, and then everybody heads back to their homes from there.
Like I said, I do need to try to get out there, but our life is just so consumed with sports right now. I think I was just telling Addison tonight at softball practice for our youngest, I said, we have a sports something going on 7 days a week, and it's like it's tough, but we get through it. I love spending time with the kids in sports, and I coach my son's baseball team. Amy coaches our oldest softball, and we both tag team our youngest in her softball coaching. So, honestly, I don't miss it. And
sounds like you need a sports vacation, Mike, and you need to come to Carlisle.
Yes. We even tied in going to a Cubs game this Friday for the older two. So, give them the Wrigley Field experience.
Nice.
Sports, and then on the days there are no sports, it's beer. But guys, thank you very much for joining me tonight on FieroCast. I learned a lot more on the event, and I hope everybody else learns a lot more as well. Just your guys' knowledge is great, and it shows, and I hopefully it spreads too. Thank you again for joining me tonight, Gary, Jen, and Matt. Thank you very much. I learned a lot more. So, all right.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
For having us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Catch you later.
All right. Thank you again to Jen and Matt Goss and Gary Pickard for joining me tonight on this newest episode of FieroCast. We hope tonight helped you with more information about the Jim Gilbert Memorial event held in the fall, and as well as the upcoming Fieros at Carlisle. This podcast was produced by Golden Line Graphic and is a production of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. Thank you for joining me tonight. Again, I am your host, Mike Croyer, and thank you for listening to the newest episode of Fiero Cast. This is episode 52, and it is the only podcast dedicated to the Pontiac Fiero and the Fiero community. If you'd like more information or have any ideas on future Fiero Cast, you can email me at mkroyer@fierofocus.com. Remember to keep Fieroing, and good night, Fiero owners, wherever you are.